Let's go. Woo! All right. Yeah. So let's just I'm gonna open with the intro real quick. Welcome to F1 or F Off, your audio pit stop for F1 news, interviews, and race reviews. I am your very giddy host, Iddris, and joining me is.
I am your other giddier host. I can't say giddier. Maybe I'm as giddy. I don't know.
Most
but why
giddy?
Are we giddy, Iddris?
I don't know. Maybe it's the fact that we have Alanis King on the podcast today.
What?
Hello.
What up? What up?
If you can't see me, I am moving my orange juice away from my cat Portia, who is trying to drink it. So, which happens every day.
Yeah, you know, just something about cats. Like, okay, so all three of us have cats. We were just discussing something about cats and just taking your drink. Does Portia have a drink of choice? Is it orange juice always for you?
She likes apple juice a lot. So
okay.
She likes apple juice better than the orange juice, but the orange juice will do. And then she just gets her head in there. And like sometimes I look over, like the orange juice, she doesn't usually start drinking. Yeah. The apple juice, she starts drinking. And I'll look over and it's fresh apple juice, just poured it, and she'll be drinking it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not pouring that out, so I'm not going to waste that. So I guess we're sharing today. Great.
We have one of those nice little water dispensers for Maisie that's like, you know, silent, like pours, and it's all really nice. And we put the filtered water in there, but still she just begs at the bathroom sink for us to turn the faucet on so she can
Portia
just, like,
too.
lap up on this.
Oh no, Portia, we have two sinks. And Portia will go to the first one, you turn it on, and then she'll go, okay, I'm going to the other one. And you'll turn it on, and then she'll go back to the other one, and you'll turn. It's a power play.
Yeah. Oh,
it
absolutely.
It is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's like this is their way of messing with us in the morning. But
she's
you
like,
know,
I like having options.
Oh, it's a power play. It is absolutely a power play. She loves when you turn on the sink for her. Oh, she's yelling right now.
Well, Alanis, we're super excited to have you on the podcast. Just like a little background, we met you at the Circuit of the America for the F1 Grand Prix of 2022.
Yeah.
And really, and I think, I don't know about Iddris, but I came to know of you and Elizabeth through your book and also through Donut Media.
Yeah.
And so on the plane flying to Texas, I read through Racing with Rich Energy, and literally, like, there's been only a few moments in my life where I've actually made audible noises as I was reading on like a book. And I'm sure the people on the plane looked around me like, what the hell is that guy reading? Because I'm just like, what?
Is he reading smut?
Like, you know, because like that book was incredible. And it's like, I remember the Racing with Rich, the Rich Energy saga in F1, but like, I didn't know all the juicy details in between. So it was just like, it almost feels like this perfect historical document at this point, just documenting exactly what has happened, because this is stuff we need to know for the future for really any motorsport, not just F1.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, thank you.
And to add on to that too, like, you know, the way you guys wrote that was just so cool, right? It was really approachable, right? And like the way it was like constructed made a lot of sense, you know. And
like you did,
I was in the exact same position as Gabe when I was reading through that. I was reading on my Kindle, right? So the entire time reading through this, I'm just like, because I'm just thinking like, there's no way like an official sanctioned team with like Haasbucks, right, is actually making these kinds of moves, right? Like, it is ridiculous. But you know, without the two of you kind of chronicling and journaling this, you know, F1 fans of tomorrow, with whatever Netflix reality season show is the thing in the future, they wouldn't know about this. So, you know, shout out to you guys for doing that.
When you wrote that book, obviously you and Elizabeth were journalists at the time, and you were working for the same company, right? When you were doing it, or
so we worked for the same company while we reported on Rich Energy. So obviously, for those who don't know, Rich Energy entered Formula One. They announced that they were going to enter in late 2018. They would be the title sponsor for the Haas Formula One team for several years, starting in 2019. And at the time, they had $700 in the bank, according to the most recent bank statements. And the Haas Formula One team at the time ran on a budget of about $100 million a year. So everybody was like, 700, $100 million. Okay.
Yeah.
So everyone was a little shocked at all of this. And so Elizabeth and I reported on it while we were at Jalopnik. We just followed these updates constantly all the time, because what we found was at the beginning of the Rich Energy saga, a lot of outlets were not questioning Rich Energy. They were just like, yeah, here's a sponsor. Woo. And we were like, so we started looking into it. Obviously, as everyone thought it was going to implode, it did implode. And I really feel like it was nice to capture that in the moment, because you could say if you did this in 10 years, you could have more reflection on it. And I agree. But also, I wish more than anything else in terms of Formula One that someone had been around to basically live document the Moneytron scandal, which was a supercomputer that could supposedly predict the stock market. And it was the sponsor of the Onyx Formula One team. That also spectacularly exploded. And I wish I could have live accounts of that happening, because all you have are little snippets of information about it now. You don't have a live account of the Moneytron F1 team. And I wish I could have that. So we were at Jalopnik while we were reporting on Rich Energy, but I actually left Jalopnik in early 2020 to go work for Business Insider. So Elizabeth and I spent about 3 years from 2020 or late 2019 onward working on it. So we only worked at the same place for a little bit of time while writing the book, but while reporting on the live events that happened, the 2019 season, we were both at Jalopnik. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I definitely enjoy the fact that you were bringing in that book, you were adding those contexts of like, this is like not the first time that we've had weird, nefarious things happening in the sport. And also, like Iddris was saying too, it's a very accessible book in a sense that like you're explaining things about F1 that like people who are reading it might not know, like the starting procedure, like before the like cars take off, or like the flags that are waved, like that's incredible little context, and that's really, really, really awesome. So
thank you.
I'm stoked on it.
That's always a goal of mine when I'm writing, is I think you need to inform people who don't know while not boring people who do. So ultimately, Racing with Rich Energy is a business book, right? It's about sports business and what happens when sports business doesn't go so well. And so this is a book that I feel like anybody could read and be interested in, because it is a wild time in sports history.
Absolutely.
But if you don't know about Formula One, and we're saying these things, but we're not telling you what they mean, then you're going to be confused. Like, there's a time in the book where we talk about Kimi Räikkönen's retirement from the Monaco Grand Prix, where he gets out of the car and walks to his hot tub on his yacht. But a retirement in Formula One just means you retired the car for that race. You didn't retire from Formula One. So people need to know things like that. People need to know that the flags are like the same color as a stoplight. People need to know this and this and this and this and this. And also, you'll notice that not just about Formula One, but about little bits of modern life that will no longer be modern in like 100 years or so. So Instagram stories, we talk about Instagram stories, and you say images or videos or text that disappear after 24 hours. Because if people are reading this in 100 years, they might not know what an Instagram story is. So it's not only educating modern people who may not know as much about Formula One, it is also educating future readers for like hundreds of years without making it seem like overwhelming for the people who are currently reading it, right? So all of that stuff is also very important.
It'd be like a book, be like a history of like IndyCar, or IndyCar in the early years, and somebody did a book on it, and then they explained what like a telegram is, like, you know, Morse code or something like that. I mean, for context, like that would be good. So yeah, that's awesome. Well, like, So obviously, like, as you said, like you are a journalist and you're still a journalist to this day. So like where did this sort of like origins of like your love for cars and for racing and journalism kind of like happen? Like where was there like a moment where it clicked for you, or has it always been the plan?
Well, when I was a kid, I had a friend named Andrea. We're actually still very good friends. We see each other all the time. Andrea had moved to America, I think in like kindergarten or so. And by first grade, we were like best friends. And so we grew up together and we spent all of our days together. We met with each other and like sat in trees all day and hung out, right? And Andrea always told me she never understood how I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, right? Andrea wanted to be a global correspondent for CNN, which makes sense because when she was very young, she came to America, she learned the language, she did all of that. And so for her, the world was very interesting. She wanted to be a global correspondent. And she said, how do you not know? We're 12 years old. You have to know what you want to do.
Yeah.
And I was like, I mean, I guess like we're getting kind of ancient here. We got to know what we want. And she just never understood it. And I said, well, Andrea, I just haven't found something that I want to do all day, every day for the rest of my life. I haven't. And we got free tickets to a NASCAR race in 2009. And it was in the recession. I was 13, turning 14 that year. And my mom said, if you want to do anything this year, if you want to have any fun at all, we're going to NASCAR because it's free. And I said, that doesn't sound like fun at all. That sounds awful. And she said, well, we're going. So we pull up. I don't know what's going on. Nah, you know, we see a shirt that has Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s face on it. And she goes, that's Dale Jr. And I'm like, who's Dale Jr.? And she's like, that's Dale Sr.'s son. And I was like, who's Dale Sr.? I don't know what's going on. I don't know. But we pull up to this facility and it was Texas Motor Speedway. Texas Motor Speedway is a 1.5 mile long oval.
Okay.
And you pull up to this facility. And it's the biggest sporting facility, probably the biggest facility I've ever seen in my life, right? At Texas Motor Speedway, when it was built to be incredibly modern and fancy and nice. So it just has glass walls up every single side. It has apartments with like these shining blue glass all over it.
Apartments?
Oh, yeah. You have, so Charlotte Motor Speedway and I think Texas Motor Speedway, they have a big like fancy building that's like suites and apartments and stuff. No, people live at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So this is a very, very fancy facility and it's huge. I've never seen anything this size. And I'm like, oh, okay. Okay, maybe there's something to this. We go in and they have the race and it's 43 cars because we did the second tier series that it was called the Nationwide Series then. Now it's called the Xfinity Series. We go in. And it's Saturday, and they have the second tier series, the Cup Series. The big dogs are tomorrow. And 43 cars go by, and they take the green flag. And it is the most shrill, earth-shaking sound I have ever heard. And also, we're up in the grandstands, and I feel like I can see the end of the end of the earth because we're so high up. We're in this massive facility. And that and the smell and all of the things that were going on, I didn't know what was going on. But whatever it was, I was like, that's it. That's what I'm going to tell Andrea I'm going to do with my life because that's it. I don't know what's going on, but I want to do it. And so from that point forward, we went to the Cup race the next day. It was also great. From that point forward, I decided I'm going to watch every single race in NASCAR's top 3 series. So that's about 100 races a year. I'm going to watch every single race. I'm going to watch every single TV show about this sport. I'm going to learn every single thing about it. And that's what I did. I started at 13 years old, learned everything about it. And the reason I went into journalism was actually because I feel like when you're a kid, you see people doing things. And if those people look like you think you can do those things.
Absolutely.
Right? But if the people don't look like you don't think that's a possibility. So what I saw was I didn't see women driving, you know, I mean, Danica Patrick came along, but I didn't see women in the car. I saw women on pit road reporting on TV. And so I said, I'm going to be a reporter because that's what I see me doing. Right.
Yeah,
It never occurred to me that I could be something else. And that is just that's a constraint of our society, and that's how kids look at things,
Absolutely.
you know? And that's why it's important to see people doing things. And I love that I'm a reporter. I love writing. I love making videos. I love doing all of that. But what I often say is, I knew I was going to do this and I did it.
Mm-hmm.
If I had decided I was going to be a driver, even though I would have been about 8 years late, if I had the money, I could have succeeded at that too.
Wow.
Yeah. You go ahead, Iddris.
I was going to say, I love hearing this because this is something Gabe and I talked about just recently with the latest season of DTS. Even though, honestly, Drive to Survive is like, it feels like it is definitely a chapter that is closing, right? But I was so happy to see Claire Williams, like, talking, right? And I don't know if that was really like a strategic move on behalf of like the DTS like production management team, because it's like, it's so cool to see like the only like woman team principal in F1 history talking about this and giving insights. And it's relevant too, right? Because she was just there at Williams. She was just there a couple years ago. So she knows what she's talking about, right? And to see Danica Patrick there too. And it didn't really occur to me, because if you go back to look at some of the older seasons of DTS, it's just like all just dude bros, right? And some of these dude bros I love, right? Like I love Danny Rick's smile, you know, like it's infectious, right? But at the same time, it's like, what about some other experiences, some other backgrounds, and like what else is here, you know? And no, I love that. I love hearing that.
Yeah. Will Buxton's vague delivery of drama that happens as it happens. I love Will Buxton. Like I really do. Like, you know, it's just, and I think he must be a little bit self-aware of like how he does that. I think, but
it's gotta be.
You know, it's sort
if
of
Max Verstappen leads by 20 seconds, that means Max Verstappen has a 20-second lead. I haven't watched it.
Preach, brother.
That's right.
I haven't watched the new season. I have one streaming service at a time, and currently it's HBO, so I have not seen the new season.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. Like, it's good to see these people doing things.
Yeah. It's funny. I was thinking, as you were talking about that, I was thinking about, like, for me, like, kind of where my origin for the car love is. And honestly, the only thing I can really think of, I think the moments for me was when my dad was a cop in Cleveland for, you know, like 18 years. And so when I was a little kid, they used to do a thing where if they would bust like a drug dealer, you know, and he had a fancy car, they would either sell it in auction, but sometimes they would like turn the cars into like the Dare cars. You know, they would just like paint Dare on the side of it.
That's where they got the Dare cars?
Sometimes, in some instances, yeah. So the Cleveland Police Department had confiscated a like 84 C4 Corvette, and they turned it into a patrol car. And so it had the lights, and it had the white doors, and it had the symbol. Yeah, and so my dad, being all of 5'6", was the only person who could fit comfortably in that car to drive it, because all of his other police officers were like 6'4", 6'5", and so they couldn't actually fit in it. And so he used to take me to preschool or daycare in that car. I would just sit in the passenger seat, and we would drive in this police C4 Corvette to get to school. And so ever since that time, every time I saw a Corvette on the road, I was just like, I freaked out. I knew the tail lights, like those iconic 4 circles. Like I could recognize that car on the road, and I would freak out. And my parents were like, it's a Corvette, and I would freak out. And so even to this day, like it's still my favorite car. I still love all the versions of it. C4 is still my favorite, but like that was definitely my origin start. And then from there, it just kind of spitballed or just, you know, snowballed and just kind of kept rolling. So it's nice to know that, like, you know, when you're a kid, it's like those are the experience, even if it's just a visceral thing as hearing the sound of the cars. It's just, that can be such an impactful thing. So that's awesome to hear.
And what I love so much about your story too is that, like, I guess I hadn't realized, but like the love is really NASCAR. It really all started there, right? And that's what really got you into like looking at other motorsports, right? And being able to report on F1 and all the other series out there. But I love that. I love hearing just like, what is the origin story? And and you're a NASCAR stan to this day. And we'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about that today.
Yeah, which is lucky for us, because that's exactly what we want to talk to you about. Because like obviously, podcast is F1 or F off. I was a huge F1 fan. I pulled Iddris into it.
Everybody listening is like, F off NASCAR.
Yes. yeah. No, but what's funny is it's like I always had that negative attitude towards NASCAR. I was definitely one of those like they only turn left guys. Yep. I loved Talladega Nights. I still do, but I loved it for different reasons back then because it was like satire, and I thought that was funny to make fun of it.
No, it's real.
No,
that's how they are.
That's how it is. But what's funny for me is like 2020 happened, right? And then they started putting up all these classic races on YouTube for people to watch. And I watched the first ever televised NASCAR Daytona 500, and I was mesmerized. And so from that day on, I'm like, actually, okay, we're going to reevaluate this now. I mean, that race literally ends in a fist fight, which is amazing to me.
1979.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So for you, like, I guess, like, if we were anybody who's listening or anybody who expresses an interest in wanting to get into NASCAR, wanting to look towards it, or like, what are the sort of things that you would tell them? Like, what would be your elevator pitch for NASCAR? You know what I mean? Like, if somebody was like, I want to watch it, why?
God, so many reasons. Oh, I love NASCAR. Not only is there an abundance of NASCAR, so there are 3 national touring series. You have the Trucks, the Xfinity Series, and the Top Level Cup Series. So on any given weekend, you can watch 3 NASCAR races on television. It's amazing. And not only that, you have international series. So like if you're in Europe, you have the Euro series, you have the Canada series, you have the Mexico series. Like there's NASCAR everywhere all the time, right? Wow. Not only do you have that, but NASCAR is extremely competitive. There are 40 cars on track. They've actually lowered the car count. So it used to be kind of just 43 across the board. Now it's 40 in the Cup Series. It's a little lower in the Xfinity Series and a little lower in the Truck Series. But generally 40 vehicles are on track, and a good percentage of those vehicles could potentially win the race, and more can win the race depending on what track you're at. So if you're at Talladega or Daytona, you're drafting. You have to be good at drafting, but at the end of the day, it's an equalizer because everyone's in a pack. So anytime you're watching a NASCAR race, there are so many people who can win, and they're all interesting in their own ways. Yeah. And you have to learn about them to learn why they're interesting. Of course, you have to invest like you do with Drive to Survive and Formula One drivers, but you can watch any of these races and there are so many rivalries, and everybody's going at each other all the time. You don't have situations where it's like, hello, engineer, can I pass, please? It's like, I'm going to pass. And if you don't let me pass, I'm going to wreck you. NASCAR is just so intense all the time. And I really, really love it because you're watching this race and you could have like Kyle Busch in the lead. Kyle Busch for many, many years was the villain of NASCAR. Now he went from Toyota to Chevy, and he has kids now. And so everybody's like, we love Kyle Busch. And the new villain is Denny Hamlin. And so, okay.
And that's your guy, right? Like Denny Hamlin's your guy.
So Kyle Busch, when I was growing up, was my favorite driver. I still cheer for Kyle Busch. Denny Hamlin's a pal. I also cheer for Denny Hamlin. Tyler Reddick is also one of my drivers. So I would say when I was a kid, my number one was definitely Kyle Busch. And Kyle is still really up there. My number one is Tyler Reddick because he's my buddy. But I still, like, if it's Tyler and Kyle, I'm okay with either of them winning, right? Like, it's fine. Right. Also, Denny, I always want to see Denny win. I want him to see him do well. He's very entertaining. But I think the best way I can describe NASCAR personalities is at Bristol Motor Speedway, they bring you out on stage during driver introductions and they let you say a line. Okay. You can say whatever you want. And I think it was 2010, maybe 2011. We are knee deep in this beef between Kyle Busch and Brad Keselowski, right? They are going at it. Brad Keselowski comes out on stage and takes the mic and he goes, Brad Keselowski, driver of the number whatever Dodge, and Kyle Busch is an ass. And he just gives the microphone back. And it's like, that's NASCAR. That's NASCAR. Like he had one line to tell the and everyone went, what? Everybody's like, Kyle Busch. Like
Oh my
Wow.
God, that's insane. They're just like just
F1.
unfiltered, just like they just say what you want.
Imagine,
Wow.
like, literally imagine like driver introductions at Miami, right?
Yeah.
The Formula One drivers.
Yes,
Everybody's like,
Oh God,
I didn't like that. It distracted me. No. If that was NASCAR, like Lando Norris would come out and be like, Lando Norris, driver of that orange McLaren, somebody out here is an ass. And everybody would be like, what? Like, NASCAR is exactly what you think it is. And that's why it's so good.
my God.
My other example of why to watch NASCAR is everybody probably remembers when Ross Chastain throttled it into the wall and went full speed around a wall to make the championship race over Denny Hamlin, because he was not going to race his way in. It was the last lap. He was not going to pass Denny Hamlin. He was not going to make the championship race. So instead of braking, which is what you're supposed to do on the track, he goes full throttle into the wall, stays full throttle, rides the wall all the way around to pass Denny Hamlin and make the championship. Ross Chastain and Denny Hamlin are enemies, okay? It's like Kyle Busch and Brad Keselowski. That was them. Denny gets out of the car. They're like, Denny, how you feel about that? And he's like, gotta give it to him.
That's insane.
All right.
That's insane.
And at this point, Denny Hamlin is getting older, so he is losing his chances to win a championship, and that's a big mark on his career. He hasn't won a championship yet, and he's just like, yep, I gotta give it to him. Like 5 months earlier, Ross Chastain, they were at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course, and road courses have access roads. Obviously, this is a Formula One show, so we know about access roads. If you wreck or something happens, you can use an access road as a shortcut. The NASCAR rules going to the Indy road course were, if you need to bail on a restart where all the field is just going headfirst into the first turn, if for safety reasons you need to bail, you can use the access road because it's the same length.
Okay.
Final restart, or close to the final restart. We have all 40 cars, 2x2, thunder into this first turn. Ross Chastain knows he is not going to get out of there in good shape. He is not going to win. He's like at the front, okay? He's racing for the win. Dude takes the access. And he comes out of the lead.
That's amazing. Oh God,
This is
that is some Gran Turismo stuff. I mean, even
absolutely.
wall riding, because didn't he say something like? Because I think everybody was talking about like I've done that in video games like a million times.
Yeah,
I didn't think it would actually work physics wise in real life, and it did.
Yes, and Ross gets credit for the wall ride, which he should, but no one ever talks about the access road. He comes out in the lead, and Tyler Reddick was in the lead, right? And Ross takes the access road and comes out right ahead of Tyler. And I'm like, no way, Ross. But also I was like, that's legal, man. That was legal. Because there was a loophole. Incredible. There was a loophole in the rules. Right. Tyler passes him back, so Ross does not win the race. And I'm like, you know what? That was good, Ross. That was good. NASCAR did not like that. NASCAR said, you found a loophole. We don't like that. We're closing that loophole before the race ends. And they knocked him back like 30 positions because they were so embarrassed that they had a loophole. And I was like, that's not right. Ross found a loophole. Close it later. Close it later. But he found it.
Yeah. Right.
And you need to let him keep it. That's NASCAR for you.
Yeah, and this is like you should be able to just real quick. You should be able to like lean into it. You know what I mean? Just be hey, he caught us, and like that's it. You know, it's
he got us.
It's really unfair to do it that way.
Yeah.
We were just talking about rivalries and stuff too. My neighbor loves NASCAR, so I've been chatting it up with him, just trying to pick up on some game, you know. And he was like, "Oh, if you want to see something, like you should look up." I think Joey Logano and Matt Kenseth, and just like
when Matt Kenseth spider monkeyed him.
Oh my goodness! Like you don't see rivalries like that in other sports, and it's so cool that like that's kind of like desired and wanted, and it's just a different flavor.
Did you see Was it? It was Joey Logano. Yeah, it was Joey Logano. He's walking away, and a camera's following him. And out of nowhere, right? So from behind the camera, Matt Kenseth comes and just
This is kamikaze.
I did see
boom.
What was the incident recently where somebody ripped the rear bumper off of their car?
That was last week, yeah.
Was that last week?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like
uh-huh.
I've seen so many like clips of things like that. I mean, like the NASCAR fight compilation videos on YouTube. It's just like a treasure trove. You know, but what's funny is like I remember you saying this. I remember you saying this on DTS where you love to approach rules, which now I understand it's a very NASCAR fan level thing. It's just like, you know, if you can find a way to cheat, just do the cheat until they say no. Like, but like if the cheat is legal, like if it's you find the loophole, then you just do it, and then you just get away with it.
That's the thing. NASCAR is all about cheating. Motorsports in general is all about cheating, and it's about cheating till you get caught.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, NASCAR is full of those stories too. Like, so there's so many instances of weird cheating. Like I was watching a whole video where they were talking about the what was it, the Twisted Sisters, and then there's that one where the guy
yellow
had
banana.
And I forget who the driver was. There was some driver where his car was like pitched to the side, like, and so like it was like pigeon toeing basically around the circuit, and everyone's like, oh my god, like what's going on with that? But like they found out that like aerodynamically it was much more stable and so much faster, and then they just like everyone started doing it and they started banning it, and I was like, this is it's funny because it's like we think of, I mean, you think of NASCAR as being like, oh, it's a bunch of cowboys out there punching each other's face and then a race happens. But at the same time, it's like
it is at a certain level, right?
Well, yeah, but like they also have like interesting like engineering and technological innovation stuff that they try to do to get that performance advantage.
Right.
And it makes you realize it's like, yeah, this is way more technical than it's being shown. But I think it's like they do a good job of like, it gets masked by all the absurdity that makes it entertaining, right?
Well, the cheating is one of my favorite parts. So there was a big thing, I think 2018. Every team started putting a bunch of black on their paint scheme. It's not paint; it's a wrap. But in NASCAR, you call it a paint scheme, a livery.
Okay.
They started putting black all over their cars, and everybody's like, "Wow, there's a lot of black accents on the cars these days. What's going on?" Well, the teams found out that the system used to inspect the cars did not do well with black.
Oh,
wow.
So okay.
Manipulate the area of the car, put black on it, the system doesn't pick up on it. So you can cheat these areas, and you'll see if you go back and look at these photos. I wrote a story about it for Jalopnik. If you Google it and put Jalopnik in, you can see the images of the cars, and all the cars, the same areas are black because they're manipulating those areas, right?
Wow.
There was another thing. So NASCAR, when they go to road courses or sometimes short tracks, they have a rain package where you put a windshield wiper on the car, right? NASCAR teams found out that if the windshield wiper is in a certain position, even if there's no rain at all on the forecast, if the windshield wiper is at a certain angle, the aerodynamics of the windshield wiper actually make the car faster. You have all of these cars out there running windshield wipers when it is bone dry outside.
Wow.
No clouds. They're all running windshield wipers because the aerodynamics help, right? They're also... You weigh the cars, you do stuff like that. So the cars go on scales. Well, obviously you want a car to be lighter, right?
Yeah.
You want the car to be as light as possible, but it's supposed to meet minimum weight. So what people would do was they would take everyday objects, right? Like a phone, a water bottle cap, some sunglasses, drop it in the car. That's not a phone. That has a bunch of tungsten in it.
Oh, wow.
It's not a phone. It's a decoy phone.
Oh, my
Put it in there, weigh the car. The car is heavier than the car actually is.
Wow. Yeah.
That's what they do in NASCAR.
I heard a story.
I love it.
I think it was, I forget who's his name. Maybe you'll probably know when I start saying the story, but there was a driver who was...
Smokey Yunick? Is that
yes,
what we're talking
I think
about?
so.
Yeah.
Where he supposedly put a basketball in the gas tank and had it filled, and then when they checked his gas, it was like at regulation. But then when he went to the pit, he just deflated the basketball and poured the remainder left in it. He also apparently had a fuel line that was 11 feet long and it was 2 inches thick, so it would carry like at least like another gallon or two of gas in it. That's like. That's
cool
amazing.
Stuff.
Like it's like every time Formula One has to cheat, it's always like it's always like some like thing that's like sort of on there, but it's like kind of cheeky, but it's more just like really weird, like science-y sort of thing, like the Brabham fan car, you know, or like doing the weird X-wing things on the
like, now the one that was very NASCAR to me was the double chassis Lotus.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
So this was an older one. So basically a few decades ago, Formula One cars were getting too fast. They were too fast for the current safety levels. Right. So, and they were too fast because of ground effect. The cars get going and they just suck down to the ground and they get really, really fast. So Formula One, they started to have a minimum ride height. They said minimum ride height has to be this high, right? So they started raising it up, getting the ride height higher. And so that was the goal, was to eliminate that sucking action and to eliminate ground effect. So the cars are slower. So Lotus goes, all right, minimum ride height, we can do that by having two chassis. Right. We have an inner chassis, right? And an outer chassis. And when the car is on pit lane, it's Formula One, minimum ride height, right? We're resting up high, okay? But that outer layer is like, imagine like you have a round thing, right? And you have half of an Easter egg on top of it.
Yep.
Okay? So when you go out and the car starts running, the wind sucks that Easter egg down. Ground effect.
Pushes it,
sucks it right back down.
Yeah, that's
so
they
just remade ground effect.
Yeah,
and Formula One approved it, and then they were like, oh no, we can't approve that. And so they took back the approval. But that twin chassis Lotus was very NASCAR in my opinion.
See, what I love about this is that like NASCAR seems to be really cheeky about it and they enjoy it, right? It's part of the culture, right? It's there, like that is the essence of it, right? Whereas in Formula One, like when Mercedes had they would pull
the DAS system,
right? To like adjust the toe angle, right? And all the teams were just like, well, that's just not, we can't just do that. No, we're not going to do that. You know, like versus like NASCAR, I feel like if you give that challenge to Smokey Yunick, he'd be like, all right, I'll do something better, right? Like it's a thing of one-upping each other versus like, well, we won't have a chance at the championship this year. F1, they're flipping their tea. Like
so much of that is money though, right? Because it's like in Formula One, it's just like you have one or two choices. You can either copy it because you have the money to develop a system, or you complain and try and get it banned because you know you can't do it, or you maybe do it as a distraction while you like figure out what you're gonna do, right? But it seems like with NASCAR, everybody's just like, oh, that's a good idea, let's do that, and then they just do it, right?
Yeah.
Like until the guy's like, oh, okay, hold on, you can't do that. That's fascinating. What would you say? How would you say, as far as, obviously, like NASCAR at one point, I don't know if it still is, I'm assuming it still is, like, the #1 spectator sport in America, because at one point it was, right? Like, in the 80s, the 70s, like that, what people will say is the golden era of NASCAR, which most of the time, most people say is the golden era of anything is in the 70s.
So true.
But you know, is that still sort of like true? Is it sort of going through like a change or like a phase or trying to like kind of rediscover itself, kind of like IndyCar is, or is it still just kind of like, hey, you like us or you don't? Like where's the state of it at the moment?
So NASCAR really peaked in the late 90s and early 2000s. And then NASCAR's modern fall really coincided with the recession. So late 90s, early 2000s, all the stands are filled. The TV ratings are amazing. It's NASCAR, NASCAR, NASCAR. The recession happens and people are like, can't do that anymore. And that is when NASCAR really started to fall off. So they had this period between like 2009 and into the late 2010s when things were kind of rough. The schedule was stagnant, attendance was falling, TV ratings were falling, and they weren't really innovating, right? But around 2018, NASCAR was like, we're going to do something about this. And they started overhauling everything. They started changing the schedules. They changed the cars in 2022. We got a new race car. And so while NASCAR used to look like everything was an oval except for two races, Sonoma and Watkins Glen, and the cars were designed to turn left, now we're in an era of NASCAR where there are like 6 road courses, maybe 7. I haven't looked at the calendar in a while, and they've taken a couple off and replaced a couple. So a giant percentage of the calendar is road courses. And also we have a new car that came out in 2022 called the Next Gen. And this car is not just a strictly NASCAR car. It's not designed just to turn left. This is actually more of a sports car platform. Obviously it's still NASCAR, but it's more of a sports car platform. And so this car is designed to turn left and right. And the way Tyler Reddick describes it is the old car, if you were on a road course in NASCAR, because there are no track limits, you can go over all the curbing. There's track limits occasionally, but the only track limits that really exist are the S's at COTA, because if there aren't track limits there, you can just drive straight. And NASCAR drivers will drive straight through the S's if you don't stop them. Because NASCAR drivers don't care. They'll go straight, right? And so you don't really have track limits. But with the old car was designed for ovals. And so imagine taking like a really low to the ground supercar and just going over every single curb you can find. That car is going to start falling apart. Things are going to start rattling, right? Things are going to start breaking. The car is just not as good. The new NASCAR car, you can do all of that stuff, and it's designed to take it. And so, and this car is also closer to a sports car platform, like a GT platform. So you can have international drivers come in and do really well. We look at last year, NASCAR had its first ever street course race in Chicago. First time they'd ever raced on the streets in Chicago, and a man named Shane Van Gisbergen comes on over from Australian Supercars to make his NASCAR Cup Series debut. He gets in this car, and this car is so familiar to him. And so, I mean, except for the fact that he's driving on the other side of the car, like he was driving on the wrong side of the car for him, right? Aside from that, the car is very familiar to him, comes out there and wins the race in NASCAR's top series. First time that had happened in 60 years, since the 1960s. Okay. Because NASCAR has now made its platform and its races, at least at the top level Cup Series. The bottom two national levels have not updated their cars yet, but the Cup Series is now more adaptable for international drivers to come in, which is why you see Jenson Button, Kimi Räikkönen, Kamui Kobayashi, all of these people, Brody Kostecki, all of them coming in to drive these cars because these cars are closer to what they drive. So NASCAR not only added all of these new tracks, went to the LA Coliseum, literally a football field for a race. I've been to that twice. It's amazing. Not only are they taking all of these risks and they have this new car and they have a more international appeal, they've also just reinvented NASCAR to be modern, to be for the 2020s. And so I think going forward, especially with this Drive to Survive bump and the rising level of motorsports in America, NASCAR is actually finally picking back up after a decade or so of very much declining. We're starting to see that upturn again.
So talking to a coworker of mine, he's a big NASCAR stan, and he's an older guy. So for him, he always had a lot of heartburn about the changes that came in with like the staging, right? Like doing the group races and the championships and whatnot. And same with some other people that I've talked to. But honestly, for me, being a new person coming into the sport, watching this, I actually think a lot of it's really interesting because I've never seen it before. You know what I mean? So it's cool to see how like NASCAR management's like, hey, I think this would be really cool to bring in a new generation. I think it's working, you know, like seeing the next gen car. I saw that, I was like, ooh, that's really cool. Right. And like thinking about all the drivers that could come in and honestly probably like have just as good of a shot as winning, because you mentioned earlier that what's great about NASCAR is you have 40 cars, you don't know who's going to win. Right. Like maybe Kimi Räikkönen could get a win, you know, that sort of thing. And also
he was running top 10 when he got wrecked at Watkins Glen. And I was like, Kimmy, come back.
And you know when it happened, he was probably just like,
whatever, I'm going home.
But he's the driver that came to mind of like when you said the NASCAR driver will just go straight to the S. Kimmy's the one who'll just go straight to the S.
Right.
That's it.
There are very, the state of our country is in very weird turmoil. It's in a very weird place, right? So our feeling of like kind of American pride sometimes can feel a little faltering because it's like, like there's not a lot for us to be really stoked about with what the country's doing. But I will tell you that when I saw that NASCAR Camaro driving around Le Mans.
Garage 56
and just thrashing. I saw a video. It was like video of inside the car as it was driving through, and somebody put in the solo section of Freebird underneath it, and I was like, "This is the most American pride that I've ever felt in my life." Is watching this like, NASCAR spec car thrashing a European circuit. It was one of the most incredible things. I was really sad to find out that it was like the only thing that it raced, and it wasn't going to race again. And I'm like. Like I want more because it's so great. Back. I also love that Jenson Button was in it too because I love Jenson Button as a driver and like it's weird. It's amazing to know that he has this really smooth sort of like kind of like easygoing driving style, and then he's just driving this like just fire breathing American
monster
car. It's incredible. You were at that race, weren't you? Didn't you?
I was there.
Oh yeah,
I was at Le Mans. So for folks who don't know, Le Mans takes place in France, 24-hour race. It's a bunch of sports cars and prototypes, right? And so NASCAR said to show off our new platform, to show people that this is adaptable to road courses and to international stars, we're taking this car to Le Mans. So that was a highly modified version of the next gen car. Had a bigger gas tank, had more aerodynamic bits,
it had headlights.
It had headlights because you have to race at night. And the sequential shifter in the next gen car is an actual shifter handle in the next gen car. In the Garage 56 car, it was paddles on the steering wheel so that you could shift faster. So it was a highly modified version of the NASCAR next gen car. And it was sick, right? So Hendrick Motorsports made this car. They got Jenson Button, Mike Rockenfeller, and Jimmy Johnson to race this car. And then Jordan Taylor was the driver coach and also a sub if they needed him. And they were like, we're going to Le Mans in the Garage 56 category. Garage 56 is the innovative class, which means you don't have to really follow the rules of the race. You can kind of come do whatever you want, but you're also not directly competing with anybody. You just need to benchmark yourself and then go off of that, but you're not going to finish anywhere in a class. You can finish in the overall field, but not in a class. So they benchmarked themselves against some of the sports cars, and they went out there and they were faster than the sports cars. And they were like, yeah, we got this. Right. And so I was at Le Mans and they start this race and all of the cars go by. And the only car that was remotely similar to the Garage 56 car in terms of sound was the Cadillac V8. But the Cadillac V8 had rear exhausts, whereas on a NASCAR car, NASCAR cars have side exit exhausts. So the exhaust exits into the grandstands. Okay. So all the cars go by and it's like, meow, 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 meow. And you're like, for 24 hours, and every 4 minutes this happens and it shakes the earth, right? Like it shakes you don't even have to be near the actual track and it just shakes everything. So you're at Le Mans and for 24 hours, every single time that car goes by, everybody goes, the NASCAR. And like in America, you're not supposed to say like the NASCAR or NASCARs or anything. Like people like make fun of you for that. I don't. I think you should say whatever you want. But you're in France and everybody's like, oh, the NASCAR. The NASCAR. And like that's what you start calling it because it's the NASCAR, right? And at Le Mans, it's a 24-hour race. So people fall asleep, right? So you'd be next to the track at like 10 o'clock at night, 5 o'clock in the morning, whenever everybody's like, and everybody just
gets up.
And I go, there it is. And imagine like every 4 minutes for 24 hours. And every single time it goes, it never gets old, right? Every single time it went by, everybody said like an iteration of like, hell yeah, there it is. Or they laughed or whatever. And you never missed a lap making a comment on it, right? It was ridiculous. I remember because my story for Top Gear, my assignment was to stay up all 24 hours and write like a diary entry every hour. 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm with my friend Aaron Brown from Road and Track, and he is in a Ferrari Puro song. And we're in the car and we're listening to Radio Le Mans because we just wanted to sit down and like have like, I think some seat massagers for like 10 minutes, right? Because we're both exhausted and we're listening to Radio Le Mans and they're just like talk. And in the background, you just hear while they're talking. And
Mhm.
then in the middle of a word, it's just like, like on Radio Lamar. And it was quite literally the funniest thing I've ever seen. I saw multiple people actually walking around in full American flag gear. I saw multiple people walking around in Jimmy Johnson shirts. And I actually, Amazon Studios and NASCAR are making a documentary about Garage 56. And I went and filmed for it last August. They asked me to come since I was one of the few American journalists who was there. And they asked me all these questions about it. And I got an email from them the other day because they needed me to like sign off on something. And I said, oh yeah, thanks for emailing me. It was so much fun. Can't wait to see it. And they responded and they said their favorite part of the film is when I say like something like, hell yeah, America. And I was like, oh my, wait, I said that? Like, what? And I was like, rah!
That's
I was like,
awesome.
I was like, one, I said that. Two, that's in there.
I hope that's in the trailer.
That's amazing.
For it too. That's
Oh, it
like,
needs
that's
to
just
be.
a soundbite that happens. Just go, hell yeah!
I love how like right now you're like you're searching through your memory banks. You're like, did I say that? I mean, I was really tired, so I probably did. Maybe.
I guess I said that. No,
I mean, how can you not say that? Like,
Yeah.
even just looking at that car, especially after it when it was all dirty and they just left it there, and you're just like, hell yeah. Like,
hell yeah.
It's one of those things you see, you just want to go, brother, you know?
Yeah, brother, let's go. Well, I think the really interesting thing, and I think probably when I said hell yeah and like rah, I think when I said that, I was discussing meme culture around it because the Garage 56 car, if we're truthful, not a lot of people were paying attention to it until it got there. And the thing that made everyone pay attention was Lamar does a class photo where they put all the cars on the track and they take a photo of them. And you see this class photo and all the cars. And if you're listening, Google Garage 56 Lamar class photo because you need to see it. I'm not making it up. I'm not exaggerating. Look it up and look. All of these cars are like the size of a Miata. Okay, like let's assume all these cars are the size of a Miata.
Right.
Comparison's sake. The Garage 56 car is in the middle row and it sticks up and it looks like a Suburban in a sea of Miatas. Okay. It's massive. It's about twice the size of every other car. And that is when everyone started paying attention because everybody was like, that's goofy as hell. That's so goofy.
Right.
And everybody was like, America, like it's huge, right? Let's go. And then it gets out on track, and we start seeing videos of it going by, and it's and everybody's like, what?
Yeah.
And that the meme culture around it, the fact that everyone started posting like, what the fuck is a kilometer? Sorry, you have to point that out. I said that in the documentary too.
Right.
The fact that everyone's posting that, everyone's posting Freebird, they're posting like George Washington standing on some cannons and stuff.
Of course,
of course. Meme culture is what made Garage 56 so compelling because meme culture grabbed the massive vehicle and the massive sound and just made it into this like cheerleading. It felt like the Olympics, but funny, right?
Yeah, right.
And so that was one of the things I talked about in the documentary because I think that was the really, really defining factor of everyone caring about this car was meme culture. So that's what I was talking about. And I guess they really liked that conversation. I talked to Jimmy Johnson at 9:00 in the morning on Sunday at Lamar because at Lamar, you just say, hey, can I interview this person? And they're like, yeah, after one of their stints. And maybe that's midnight. Maybe it's 4:00 in the morning. Maybe it's 9:00 in the morning. So after Jimmy's stint at 9:00 in the morning, I went and talked to him and I was asking him to describe driving the car to me, like put me in the car with him, what's going on. And one of the things he said was the car is so big compared to all the other cars out there that you have to look over your shoulder and down when you're because at Le Mans, obviously you don't have spotters. In NASCAR, you have spotters. I've been a NASCAR spotter before. I was a NASCAR spotter a few weeks ago.
We're going to talk about this.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. Yeah.
At Le Mans, you're on your own. So he would have to sit up, literally lengthen his spine and look down over the window to see the cars next to him because he was the 18-wheeler next to all of the small cars, right?
Yeah.
And so that was a very interesting conversation. It was very interesting to talk to him about that. It was also just like very career defining to be at Le Mans at 9 o'clock in the morning, watching a thing that's never going to happen again and talking to Jimmy Johnson about it was wild.
Right. It just kind of shows like the reach of the sport, right? Like that people are really paying attention now. And I'm so excited to see more of NASCAR. It's just like, and the fact that there's like the 3 series, right? There's a flavor for everyone, right? I think the one that's really interesting to me is just like the truck series. Like,
I knew you were gonna say the trucks.
It's just like
what are we doing?
I mean, like it makes
cool.
sense. Like I mean for real, like it's just you might as well just throw trucks in there. Like it's like how could we make this more mass appealing to like American consumers, but also just add another element to it that just almost inadvertently, I mean maybe deliberately makes it more interesting because obviously trucks are like, you know, it's not aerodynamic shape. It's got a literal wall behind it and like, you know, thing. It's like
a thing you'll notice to compensate for that is if you watch trucks on an oval, they are skewed out. So the front of the truck is left oriented and the back of the truck is like to the right. So they're diagonal, pointed to the left when they're on an oval. So the actual truck is pointed the way of the turns.
That's amazing. Okay. Yeah. So it's kind of going on a tangent the entire time.
They're basically like crab walking. Yeah. Like the crab walk.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
If you compared to the body, they're crab walking. Obviously, the tires are going the right way compared to where they're hooked up to. But compared to the body, it looks like a crab walk. So if you watch them on an oval, you'll see it looks like the vehicles are crab walking.
Yeah. Speaking of NASCAR trucks, I know you've said this a few times on Donut Media, and we even asked, like mentioned this when we were talking to Elizabeth too. Why does Max Verstappen seem to be obsessed with NASCAR truck series?
I wish I knew.
It's such an interesting thing to be fixated on, but like you say he does it all the time, right?
He does. And so this was a thing, I don't think a lot of people knew this. So Max has a couple of iRacing accounts. I feel like one of them is his and one of them is under his dad's name. And like I think his name he only does like the higher end stuff for the good iRating. And I think he uses his dad's account when he wants to screw around. So I think if I'm remembering correctly, obviously this is off the top. Yeah, literally. This is off the top of my head. But one thing Max does all the time is run NASCAR trucks at Talladega. And I don't understand what is so compelling to him about NASCAR trucks at Talladega. But we saw this. We were looking at his iRacing account one time and we saw this and we were like, brother is running like NASCAR trucks at Talladega every hour on the hour. Like, what are you doing, dude? Man. Like, bro, what is going on?
He's awesome. He's plotting out that post F1 career.
No, literally, there was one day where it was like 9 a.m. NASCAR trucks at Talladega, 10 a.m. NASCAR trucks at Talladega, 11 a.m. NASCAR trucks at Talladega, noon NASCAR trucks at Talladega. Like, what? I don't understand.
That's awesome.
When does he get time with Kelly? What is?
I don't know. I don't know, but it's so fascinating. And like, I bet he does it because he knows that in no world while he's running F1 could he ever run a super speedway race in NASCAR because they wreck too much.
Yeah.
Like Christian Horner is not going to let that man go on a Ferris wheel. Like, he can't run NASCAR trucks at Talladega.
Right.
I would like to ask him someday, next time I get to talk to him, what is it about NASCAR trucks at Talladega? I want to know. And I bet he'll be like, how do you know that? That's what it sounds like. I can see where you race.
Yeah.
And he'll be like, I just like it. And that's it. That's all I get.
Or maybe he suddenly admits that that's what his plan is post and it becomes breaking news that all of a sudden everyone spreads around the world.
What's interesting is I think I did mention this on the Donut Racing Show too, is Shane Van Gisbergen came over to drive the Chicago street course. And the narrative was after he won, he decided to come pursue NASCAR full time. I do not believe that narrative. This is and I remember I did a conspiracy corner on this. My conspiracy is that Shane was always planning to come do this because Shane does not like the current state of Australian supercars. He said he doesn't really like the car. He doesn't like the current state of it. He wanted to go do something else. And if you look at it, he was running ovals on iRacing from around the time Australian supercars got that new car was when he started running ovals on iRacing. So I think he thought, NASCAR has a new car that is similar to a car I like driving, and I want to go run something else. So I'm going to start practicing ovals on iRacing. And then when he actually made his NASCAR debut, he was in a car called Project 91, which is Trackhouse Racing's experimental car for superstars, international superstars. It's the one Kimi Räikkönen was in. And when they were signing this, Justin Marks, who owns the team, I was informed that Justin Marks was asking around, like, hey, what do we think about Shane Van Gisbergen? Like, do we like that as a prospect? So that tells me that Shane went to Justin. Shane knew. Now, this is just conspiracy. Shane knew that this was an international car. This was a thing he could get in if he wanted to. And he called Justin and he said, hey, can I try this out? And Justin was like, let me think about it. Let him in the car, ran the race, won the race, continued his long-held NASCAR dream. I do not think it happened that day. I do not think it happened that weekend. I think Shane was playing the long game, and I will eventually talk to him about that because that's my conspiracy. So I think Shane was playing the long game.
I mean, I think it's not. I don't think it's really a conspiracy. I think it makes sense. The timeline checks out.
The timeline checks out.
We just had the receipts.
We just had the receipts.
That's right.
Shane would be like, why are you looking at my iRacing? Stop looking at that. Same with Max. He'd be like, what is your deal?
I can imagine you bring that up with Max and like, oh, who was the mayor's kid? Who's like the rich trust fund kid from Parks and Rec that Paul Rudd plays?
Oh gosh,
John Ralphio.
Yes, no, not John Ralphio. It was the guy who played Paul Rudd played him. He was like, give it to me, Leslie.
Bobby
Come
Newport.
On, Bobby Newport.
Yeah, give it to me.
Right?
I want
it. I could see Max like kind of pulling you aside. He'd be like, no, wait, how did you find out? Like,
how did you know that?
Racing? Like, go on, tell me.
Literally, like I think it's fascinating. I really just want to know what his deal is.
Yeah.
Like Shane, I get it makes sense. The ovals make sense. I see the trajectory. I see what was going on in his head. Max, I don't know what's going on up here. I don't know.
Maybe, because back in the day, Red Bull used to always do the, hey, we're going to have our Red Bull drivers wear the cowboy hat and the boots. Maybe he just had him on for just a bit too long, and he's like, I'm in.
He's in. He's literally in. You're so right.
Well, one thing I do want to talk about, one thing I do want to mention I think is really fun and interesting is the fact that your husband does a lot of iRacing and does it pretty successfully.
Our rig is behind that wall behind me. The rig's on the other side.
And it's always fun to hear to see like snippets of like you taking pictures like as they're racing. I also love that he ran the Racing with Rich Energy livery on his car in iRacing. The support for that it's really nice. It's really touching. And it also makes complete sense too because like you're a NASCAR super fan. And so obviously you're going to be supportive of something like that specifically. It's like it's wonderful. One thing I do want to talk about is I do want to talk about your a little bit about like your car review sort of like YouTube channel sort of stuff. But before we do that, one thing Iddris and I wanted to talk about too because we wanted to get your take on is we want to talk about sort of NASCAR's sort of cultural things that sometimes can happen. I noticed one specifically instance where I think it was recently NASCAR put up a bunch of legacy races online and they had a little disclaimer that said like, certain imagery in this is like, racially
like
insensitive, but like we don't condone this. And I felt like that was a really kind of a big thing for NASCAR, right?
I mean, they've also banned like the flying of the rebel flag at races and stuff now. So it's like, they're taking like huge strides and measures to like say like, nope, cut it out. All right.
And like obviously like for somebody like me and like Iddris, and I would assume you too, Alanis, like being kind of a more liberally minded person, like how obviously like we think, oh well, that's great, like that's awesome, they like, I mean that's a big step for them to take, but also like how is that sort of, is that a sort of thing that's sort of like affecting the viewership, the culture of it, like, you know, like what's the sort of changes, you know, like, I mean, like,
And
you know,
to kind of throw on the to like dogpile onto that, this is going to be a whole thing, but it's kind of similar to IndyCar too, right? Where IndyCar, you go to an IndyCar race and like the vibe is very much like Boomer Dad. You know, like, it's got like
Yeah.
it's got like I mean the music is great, right? Like I love hearing like Rush and Leonard Skinner and whatever it is, you know, it definitely adds to the vibe, but it's also like will we ever hear Snoop Dogg at a at an
Yeah.
IndyCar race over the loudspeakers? Will we ever hear like Kendrick Lamar at a NASCAR race? That kind of thing, right? So it's like it's kind of the clashing of two worlds, right? Like you kind of spoke to this earlier, where there's new rules and like there's stage racing and new focus on the championship, and there's a new crowd that could be brought into this, right? Versus this is what our legacy is and this is what our heritage is, right? So like how do you marry that, you know? And has NASCAR been struggling with that? And you know, just what are your thoughts on that, and just in general?
I think the loudest people will always be loud. And you see that in NASCAR. So anytime NASCAR does something positive, they're like, this is not my NASCAR.
Mhm.
Yeah, whatever. Very few people actually act on stopping watching it because of these
Oh,
things.
yeah,
They still want to watch it, right?
course.
Right.
And I think ultimately, and the approach I like to take is I always find that the nicer you are about things and the more you make it seem like it's people's ideas to kind of read what you're saying and pay attention to what you're talking about, the more they come around, right?
Mhm.
So what I try to do on my social media is I'm like, hey, FYI, this is a special day or month. Let me tell you about it. And I'm very like nice about it. And I've had lots of people come around and say, oh, thanks for telling me, right? And if you
Yeah.
do that, the only people you're going to have yelling about stuff are the people who are going to be yelling about stuff anyway. So
Yeah.
we had a couple of, what was it, like a week ago, Easter and Trans Day of Visibility fell
Yeah.
on the same day.
Yep,
and I
right.
said, hey, everybody, happy Easter, happy Sunday, happy Trans Day of Visibility. Remember that trans folks are just people who are living their lives. And that's really cool that they get to
Mhm.
be who they want to be.
Right.
And every single response was really positive, except
Mhm.
one guy was like, way to celebrate the lesser day. And I was like, you were always going to get like, you were always
Yeah.
going to be mad about that. Right.
Yeah.
But it's one guy. So when
Mhm.
you think of like the millions of people watching NASCAR, sure, like 100 people are like, how dare you stop me from flying my Confederate flag, even though it's a loser flag? Like,
Right.
how dare you?
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Right.
4 years.
I
Yeah,
like
right.
my
4 years.
I like my heritage of losing.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if 100 people say that, that's like
Right.
one person responding to me, right? It's not
Yeah.
it's not a lot of people. And it
Right.
ultimately doesn't really matter because you're making this a better place for everyone else.
Exactly.
NASCAR has done more than I could have imagined. So obviously banning the Confederate flag, I was like, yeah, y'all should have done that like decades ago. But glad you finally did. That's
Mhm.
awesome.
Yeah.
NASCAR a few years ago started actually officially recognizing Pride Month, which to me
Wow.
was actually
Yeah.
early. So I
Mhm.
like the Confederate flag thing was very late, but the Pride Month thing, I wasn't expecting that for like maybe
Yeah.
another 5 to 10 years,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I was
yeah.
not expecting that from NASCAR, but they recognize it every year now. They make
Mhm.
entire lines of NASCAR Pride merch, right? Like I have NASCAR Pride shirts that I wear all the time.
Mhm.
It's really impressive the strides they've made on that front.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
so cool to see. And I think ultimately, yes, you're going to make people mad, but those people were always going to be mad, right?
Mhm.
They
Right.
weren't not going to be mad. And you know what? If they're not mad about Pride Month, they're mad that like somebody is in the field and they don't like that person.
Mhm.
They're mad that Danica Patrick was in the field 10 years ago. They're mad that
Yeah.
Bubba Wallace is in the field now. Like
Mhm.
they're mad that Daniel Suarez isn't from America. They're always going to be mad about something,
Right.
even if you're
Yeah.
not even pointing it out. Like,
Yeah.
they're just going to
Right.
get mad. So it doesn't really matter. And you want to get these new people and you want to bring them in because ultimately, the more people you can bring in, the better. And even the people who aren't super thrilled about it, they're
Mhm.
probably going to stay around because even some of the worst people you know will still have conversations with and be somewhat civil in public to people they don't really like.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
Yeah.
you know, I really love it. I'm really happy with the state of NASCAR. I'm
Mhm.
really happy with all of the stuff they're doing. Some things I would like to see, as we move forward in the next few years is I would love for their pride merch and their pride stuff to also include the trans flag. I would love that. I would like it to represent the progress pride flag. So you have the normal rainbow, you have the trans flag, which is white, blue, and pink. And then you also have the two brown, I think it's brown and black, or it might be brown and a darker brown. Intersectionality lines on the flag. I would love to see some merch that has every single color on it, because I think that is so cool.
Yeah.
But like where we're at is amazing. And I'm really, really happy with it. I also feel like people feel more comfortable at NASCAR races. I feel more comfortable at NASCAR races. If you had told me when I went to my first race in 2009 that NASCAR would be here right now, I would be like, wow, that's better than I thought, right? I'm happy with it.
Yeah. And these things take time too, right? Progress, unfortunately, takes time. It's incremental, right? So, and it's good. I mean, but yeah, for them to be ahead of the curve on certain things, but also acknowledging that they weren't and getting up to that speed, that's excellent. One thing I wanted to say, marketing-wise, that I wish NASCAR would pick up on, there was this cartoon that I used to watch when I was a kid called NASCAR Racers, and it was awesome. Like, I was about it. Yeah, it was like...
I don't remember that one.
So it was like three dudes. I remember like their colors were like red, blue, and green, right? And they had like, it was like, I think like a white guy, a black guy, and then like maybe like other nondescript, like he could be anything, right? And they had like these really cool cars they would race on tracks, but like their cars would turn into other vehicles. So like the red guy had like boosters that like he would just hit a button and then he just got crazy NOS in the back.
That's crazy.
Another car would turn into like a helicopter. And it was just like, but it was very dramatic. Like there was one of the drivers like crashed out and was like in the hospital with like a broken leg, but it was about like the human connection and everything.
Is this a cartoon?
Yes, from like 1999 or something like that.
This is wild.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna have to look into this. Yeah, because that sounds fascinating. That's some like Hot Wheels like racers, stuff going on.
We need more of that collab. So if you know people at the top, pull some strings and see if we can get some NASCAR cartoons going.
That's amazing. Honestly, I absolutely love that. Great idea. NASCAR racers. Oh man, that would rock.
Yeah.
Well, I want to hear a little bit about your experience as a spotter. I watched, I saw your video on it. I absolutely love that you were doing the track walk with people at COTA, passing out your CV and just had like
they all said
all of your references on it. It was amazing. It's amazing. Like I don't know how your brain works, but however it works, I'd love that it keeps working, because just the stuff that you come up with, it's just like you could be a comedian as a side job.
Yeah.
It's
so entertaining. It's so fantastic. But yeah, like how, like where did the notion come from that, and like how was that experience like as you were doing it?
And also, did you come up with your own like code as you were doing this too? Because I need to hear this. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That was a wild thing. It was in January, I think. My husband and I were sitting on the couch, and he was probably like a couple of glasses of wine deep at this point, and he goes, "Get me a spotting gig at COTA." And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Text somebody. I want to be a spotter." And I was like, "I want to be a spotter too." So I sent a text to my friend Brad Perez, who runs occasional NASCAR races. He's actually a tire tech a lot of the time, and he does like different jobs in NASCAR and in racing. And when he can get the funding for a car, so when he can get the sponsorship, he will run a NASCAR race. And so Brad was running COTA. We knew that. And so I sent Brad a text and I said, "Can we spot for you?" And he responded, "Personally, I ain't scared." And I was like, that's the kind of endorsement I need.
Yeah.
And he said, "Just ask the team owner, Tommy Joe Martins." Good thing is, I'm friends with Tommy Joe Martins. So I send Tommy Joe Martins a text and I say, "Hey, can I spot for you at COTA?" And he was like, "Actually, yeah."
That's amazing.
Because the thing about NASCAR is, so in NASCAR, you have spotters. And what spotters do is they tell drivers where cars are around them. So in NASCAR, you don't have you don't have mirrors that stick out from the side of the car because everybody would just rip each other's mirrors off. So for drivers, they not only don't have those mirrors on the outside of the car, but they also just need someone above telling them where cars are around them. Because if you make certain moves, you need to know if your car is overlapping with another car, right? And you also need to know where those cars are. So you have spotters, but on a road course like Circuit of the Americas, which is 3.41 miles in the NASCAR circuit and Formula One circuit configuration, you need multiple spotters because one is not enough. You need zone spotters, and those spotters then trade off to each other. So for each car that Tommy Joe Martins owns, which at Circuit of the Americas, he had 3 cars, each car needed 3 spotters. So he needed 9 spotters, right? Wow. And he was like, I was going to have to look around for a spotter, and now I don't. So what happened was Tommy Joe spotted in the first sector, my husband spotted in the second sector, and I spotted in the third sector. And we traded off from each other every single lap. So Tommy Joe, husband, me. Tommy Joe, husband, me. So what we did was after they said yes, we were like, oh, we got ourselves into something. And so what we did was I have some spotter friends. One of my friends is Nick Payne. And Nick Payne spots for Tyler Reddick's car. And so I reached out to him. I reached out to a couple other people, and I asked them for some tips. And then also Brad sent me, so NASCAR has a content portal where it uploads every team's radio transmission after a race weekend. So you can get the radio transmission and send it to someone. So Brad actually downloaded Tyler Reddick's audio from 2023 because Tyler Reddick won the COTA race. And so the broadcast would be showing him for most of the race, right? So he downloaded it. We synced up his scanner audio with the broadcast, muted the broadcast, and watched Tyler and then paid attention to what they called and didn't call. And we made notes. And so we did that. We asked Brad for his preferences, like inside, outside versus left, right, things like that, what kind of words he wanted used. And what's interesting is on a road course, he wanted left, right, which makes sense. Even if it was inside, outside, it would have switched. But as he's going through my section, I was in the stadium section. So the long back straightaway to turn 12, and then the squiggles after that through the carousel. And as he goes through those squiggles, the left and right compared to where I'm standing changes. So I'm calling his left versus his right, but every single time he makes a turn, which there are like 5 or 6 direction changes, left and right changes. And you have to keep up with that because you have to tell him the correct side where a car is. And so Brad said, when I'm coming down the back straightaway toward turn 12, you will not have depth perception. He said, you won't be able to see if a car is next to me. What you will be able to see is if a car is out of line. So maybe that car is next to him, maybe it's not. But if a car is out of line, basically on a road course, in ideal conditions, everyone's kind of running the same line. You run the apex and then out. You run the racing line. If someone is out of line on the back straightaway, they may be trying to dive on Brad into turn 12, which is a big passing zone because it's a big, sharp braking zone. So my job as he came into turn 12 was to tell him if someone was out of line. So I would say out of line to your left, out of line to your right. And then coming into turn 12, sometimes those people would make a move. So I would pick them up as they got closer to me and actually tell him the depth perception on it as we got closer. But that served as a warning to him, FYI, look at this car behind you. And so we did that, got all the calls down, figured it out. You're all supposed to tell the driver what's around them. So like at one point in the race, Brad had a car on his left that was like they were passing each other. And so I'm like, whatever car it was, to your left, door, still there, 8 spinning to your right, you're clear of the 8, still there on the left. Like, so as these cars are spinning and wrecking, you have to be incredibly calm because Brad is racing side by side with another car and there's a car spinning next to him, right? And my delivery has to be left side, door, still there, 8 spinning to your right, you're clear of the 8, left side, still there, door, door, and you have to be incredibly calm, because if you're not calm, they're not calm. And then I started picking up on stuff throughout the race from Tommy Joe, because Tommy Joe's the team owner. He's spotted a bunch. He's been a driver. He knows what he's doing. So I would notice, obviously I can't see Brad when he's in Tommy Joe's section, but I can hear Tommy Joe. And so Tommy Joe would tell him when he had a good corner or when something happened. So if Brad made a good pass, or he got some ground on someone into a corner, I would tell him that was a really good corner. Nice job. But very, very calmly. There were also like some other things that go on. So that happens on channel 1 with the driver. Channel 2 is everyone but the driver. So if you need to talk about things without the driver, you talk on channel 2. So if I'm telling Tommy Joe, like, say it rained, it didn't rain, but I wouldn't directly tell Brad that right away. I would flip to channel 2, because Tommy Joe is the more experienced one. And I would say, Tommy Joe, it's raining in my section, just FYI. Let me know how you want to deliver that news to Brad. So we would talk on channel 2 where Brad couldn't hear us, so that he could drive.
Right.
That was really interesting. Brad also had meme corner names for every corner. So he didn't know the corner numbers, but he knew his meme names. So the back straightaway was the DRS straightaway. And turn 12, which is the very sharp turn at the end of the straight, was called the Big Boss Battle. The multiple turns after that were called the Disney World line, because they zagged back and forth like a line for a ride at Disney World. And Brad told me, and he told all the spotters, I want y'all to use the meme names. And neither Tommy Joe nor my husband did. They did not use the meme names. I used every single one.
Beautiful.
Every
That's
single
awesome.
one.
Hey.
And
you're just like DRS zone into Big Boss battle.
Yeah, literally. Awesome. And so, because I knew that like that would snap Brad out of any like trance he was in, and he would think that was funny. And it would actually help him drive if he like thought it was funny. So at one point, like, he was pretty alone on the back straightaway. The next car behind him was like probably 10 to 15 car lengths back. So I said, no pressure behind you down the DRS straight. And he was like laughing in the car. And then at one point, they were putting down Speedy Dry, I think. No, there was something else that happened in the boss battle turn. I said something else about the boss battle turn, but in the Disney World line, they were putting down Speedy Dry, and Speedy Dry is obviously to clean up oil, so it like dries it up fast, but it puts down a powdered surface. So you need to know when you're going to drive over that powdered surface, because the surface of the track is going to change. And so I was describing where the Speedy Dry was in the Disney World line, and I was just like, oh my God, no one on the, and I was like, Brad, we're the only ones who know about these names. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, what happens when your crew chief hears me talking about Disney World? And he was like, it'll be funny. And I was like, okay, I will. Okay, great. So I used all of them, and it was quite funny. And we got done, and we finished 19th, but a penalty for Shane Van Gisbergen brought us up to 18th. And our goal that day was to finish in the top 20, because Tommy Joe Martins told me on budget they should finish about 26th to 28th every weekend, because he said, we run on $70,000. Other cars run on $100,000 or $200,000. So we should be in 26 to 28. Our goal is to finish top 20. That was our goal. We finished 18th. And Brad's sponsor, Sendero, they had this like event where they had like tacos and merch and all kinds of stuff after the race. We went to that. We were like hollering. We were having so much fun. They had like all kinds of stuff. They were playing music. We were having the best time. It was like we won.
That's awesome. Yeah, sometimes it's those little victories, you know, those little reaches that can really mean a lot. You know, it's always amazing when F1 drivers will go crazy and like excited over like just getting a point,
1 point,
or getting into second round of qualifying,
or something like that. It wasn't really anything I really thought about until I went to had a pit pass at the Portland IndyCar Grand Prix, and you're just like watching the cars just like the feet from you, and you watch all the engineers like sitting with the cars, getting them like fueled up and loading them off the track, and just spending all of this time preparing these cars for these events. And then so when they hit the wall and it's like you feel it felt that. I'm like, oh man, those guys spent so much time just to have the car crash at the first turn. And so it makes those smaller victories feel that much more satisfying because you suddenly realize like how much effort the smaller team has to put in to really get there.
You're so right.
Yeah.
That's
it's
how
amazing
it
to
felt.
see that. It's amazing to see that firsthand. So that's an amazing
So cool.
And you got to be a part of that. That's so cool.
Are you going to try and do any more spotting in the future, or is that like kind of a one and done thing for you?
Well, I thought it was going to be one and done, but about like a week after the race, Tommy Joe texted me and said, I may bring y'all to Portland for the NASCAR race in Portland.
Oh!
And so Tommy Joe was happy with how it went. So he may bring us to Portland for the NASCAR.
Oh, that's amazing. When is that race?
It's June 1st, I think.
Oh,
so I'm hearing this might be a potential career change for you.
I might, yeah.
NASCAR spotter.
I forgot that NASCAR raced at Portland. I might have to try and grab tickets to that. I'm definitely we're going to the Formula E pre, and then I'm going to the IndyCar race. But I forgot they have a NASCAR race. That might be. I might have to go and do that.
Me too.
Does NASCAR race at Mid Ohio? I believe. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to add that one to my docket for this year too. Then that's.
I think that's still on the schedule for this year. They've been at Mid Ohio for quite a while now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Well. I was gonna. Oh, go for it, Iddris. Yeah.
I was gonna say. Just to make sure we respect your time, we're gonna go into like a rapid fire round here.
Ooh. Okay. Okay.
And it's with Formula One themed. You know, we are a Formula One
Love
podcast.
It.
So
Right.
Love it.
Whoops. There we go. Okay. So, I mean, there's been a lot of stuff going on in Formula One, right? Like, this has been, I don't even know how, like, Netflix is even going to, like, make a season of Drive to Survive after the off season, the pre-season that we just had, right? Like, this wasn't even, like, real stuff going on yet, right? So,
yeah.
I just don't. I don't even know what kind of manufactured drama they're gonna have to come up with. But so there's some big things that are happening, right? So the three big things we would love to hear your thoughts on. So number one, this whole Hornergate situation, ridiculous. This is like it's cringe, like in every bit of the word, right? Do you think Red Bull actually will just drop this guy and just say, we will divorce ourselves from you because we just need to excise the cancer and just move on?
My rapid fire answer is no, because Red Bull employs Helmut Marko.
AKA Grand Moff Tarkin, as we like to refer to him.
Who has said some wild stuff, this guy.
Yeah, well, it was amazing. There was this whole thing with like Ford was talking about how they didn't like it, and there was speculation that Ford was going to pull out, and then you have Jos Verstappen saying he wants Christian Horner gone. I know you mentioned that you haven't watched the newest season of Drive to Survive or anything. I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but what I will say is that
Who won?
Who won? Oh, you don't even see Max in it. I'll say that. Like he's like
you don't see him. He's not even there.
He's not even there. Every big like triumphant moment is always for like a podium finish or just getting into the top 10.
Yeah.
And but one thing that happens is that all of the stuff that's been going on the past few weeks, none of that was covered or recorded in the previous season. So like they're talking about these like driver changes or like things happening, and they're like all excited for we're excited for the future, and then I'm sitting there thinking, like,
the future is here.
Yeah,
you're not going to be excited for the future soon here, pal. Yeah, and so it's like I don't even know. I mean, at first I thought, oh man, they're gonna have a field day, but then I'm just thinking, I don't even know, and it's weird because like you're immersed in it now, watching it retrospectively, it's just like, okay, things are way different than what it was when you first recorded this. So you guys things need to catch up a bit.
The only episode I'd recommend you actually really need to watch from this season is the episode that focuses on Alpine. Specifically the one with Otmar Safnauer. Like, it is just mean gold. Like, there's a lot there.
And it's also feels very strange because they talk about Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly having this really intense rivalry that I've never perceived in all the time that I was watching it.
Because
And-
Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly, the way they carry themselves is like junior varsity baseball. Like it doesn't like they're just like two like 16-year-olds.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, not even varsity, just JV, like the JV.
like
lacrosse
JV.
team.
And like that's not how they compete. That's just how they carry. Like it's just two dudes. Like just what's up? We're dudes. We're driving. Like
oh yeah, you see that too, and it's just like okay.
Is there really a rivalry?
Yeah, it feels so it feels so strangely forced. I don't get it. The other thing I think the next thing I don't know about you, Iddris, but the next thing I'd wanted to touch base on as far as the F1 news currently is this whole thing with Yuki and all of his teammates and how Red Bull just keeps swapping them in for somebody new the minute they're not performing. Honestly, what's going on with Danny Ricciardo just feels like a repeat of Nick DeVries, and I don't get it. It's
I don't know. I really do feel like this is just a Red Bull thing, and I actually don't know what it is about Yuki that makes Yuki the one who stays around. I love Yuki. I think he's very entertaining. But if I'm looking at marketability, I do lean toward Daniel Ricciardo just because he has more tenure being the funny guy. Like, yeah, Yuki's funny and he's great, but Daniel Ricciardo has been that for longer. So marketing wise, I lean toward Daniel Ricciardo as more of a ground, like a figure you can count on for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's odd that they would just cycle him in and out, right? But I do think Red Bull is one of those teams and companies where it's like, we're going to cycle you in and out no matter what. We literally don't care about you. Like,
right.
We're going to do what we want. And so why I find it interesting that only Yuki's teammate is subject to this is that I would actually expect both drivers to be replaceable all the time.
Right. Right.
And so I do feel like Yuki has kind of avoided that so far. But if you race for Red Bull, it usually comes for you eventually.
Yeah. It's just amazing to see how, like, we're only a couple races in, but everyone's just already back to saying Danny Rick is washed and everything. And he needs
Which is sad.
Yeah.
It is.
And it's, I don't know. It's just, that is just a beast of a machine of an organization that I think it's not for the faint of heart. I think Max Verstappen was purpose built with his childhood and like the way he grew up for this kind of environment. You know what I mean? Like it's to be able to like go through really tough scenarios and then deal with this. He was built for this. So seems to be why he can just handle it.
Right.
Totally agree.
And I guess the last thing will just be just overall with the season so far and kind of the state of the sport. What are you thinking? How do you feel?
I watch it all the time. I like Formula One. I really enjoy it. I never don't enjoy a race.
Right.
I do kind of wish there was a little more competition at the front right now, and not necessarily for my sake, but for the health of the sport.
Yeah.
I think the lack of competition at the front will make it harder to keep people around longer, which that's obviously what you want to do for the health of the sport. Am I going to watch every weekend? Yeah. Are there things that you can find interesting within the lineup? Absolutely, there are things you can find interesting. But at the end of the day, people want a knockout fight for those top spots, right? And Formula One has long been a sport where there isn't a knockout fight for the top spots. Like you have certain people dominate. Like remember when in the midst of Lewis Hamilton's every single year he wins the championship, Nico won and everybody was like something different, right? Like that's people who watch Formula One and have watched for a long time are used to that. People who have not watched for a long time are like, what happened? Right?
Yeah. Right.
Why is one person so good? That's the nature of it. I do kind of wish we could get back to the more competitive years of Formula One quicker rather than not, because you just don't want those people bailing because it's not the same Formula One that they signed on for in 2021.
Yeah, no, it's true. I often think about that. There are certain things in my life that I enjoy with like such a strong like kind of passion, and part of me wants to have more people included into it. And it's like, cause like I loved Star Wars when I was a kid, and none of my friends really paid much attention to it, you know. And then the prequels come out, and it was like, yeah, there was a little bit more, but like now, like NASCAR or like Star Wars fever is so intense that it almost makes it feel like, well, it's like less fun for me just because of the saturation of it. And it's like, I think that like Formula One runs into this problem. I agree, where it's like they really got to figure out how they're going to do this from not an entertainment standpoint, from a sporting standpoint. Like, you got to get competitive, because that is what really brings in.
That's why you care. Yeah.
That's what brings in the excitement. It's not like it's not all just the YouTube content. Like it's actually the races themselves. It's like the bread and butter of the whole thing, right? And I know NASCAR or IndyCar is going through a whole like kind of rebirth process too, and like we go on about that, but definitely want to kind of close out things with something very specific that we do for every person that we interview on a podcast. And I kind of give you a little preview of it early on. So Iddris and I started where we had our dream F1 team, like what it would be if we had it. And basically there's not a lot of restrictions. You can choose whatever car you want from whatever era you would like. You can choose like 2 main sponsorships and then like any sort of other trickling ones that you might want to. You can pick up to 3 drivers, 2 main drivers and a reserve, and it doesn't have to be F1 specific, and it can be from any era. And yeah, like what the whole like idea of your team would be, like what's your goal. So in AlanisKing's world, like what is an AlanisKing F1 team look and named like? Like what is it?
You can also give us a team principal if you want to just be a hands-off kind of owner.
Yeah. If you want to be the spotter for your team and have somebody else handle it, 100%.
I can tell you we've not had any spotters so far, so this will be first.
I am the team principal. Yeah, I want to be hands-on.
Cool.
I don't know that I have a preference on what the car is. I'm trying to think. Maybe like a Force India style pink, but not with Force India performance.
Okay. Yeah.
I want the car to be good.
All right. Okay.
I do want it to be pink. Let me see. My sponsors are going to be Racing with Rich Energy and the AlanisKing YouTube channel.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
Get that out there. And driver is what's hard, because I think you do a big combination of drivers who would be interesting. I think one of my drivers, even though unfortunately he's going to be really tall and he's going to have to really compensate for that by not eating, because he's going to be too tall. Is going to be Kyle Busch, and Kyle Busch is he's like 6 foot. So he's going to have to really compensate because he's taller than most of them. So I'm sorry in advance, Kyle. You can't literally. You're just going to have like half a meal a day here. We need like some famine going on for you to meet the minimum weight. It's true. They're all like 5 foot something.
They're big guys.
Yeah.
They're not 6 foot like Kyle Busch. He's too tall to be in Formula One, but I think it would be interesting. I'm going to say him, and then I do want to benchmark him against somebody. So I want him to have Lewis Hamilton, and we will put them performance-wise in Lewis's car from Lewis's reign, right? Any of those cars from Lewis's reign. And I want Lewis and Kyle, but the car is pink.
Right. I can make that pink. Yeah.
I like it.
And I want to see how they do.
Okay.
This is perfect. And I'll tell you, I already have an idea of how I'm going to put this together for you. I don't want to tell you because it's gonna be a surprise, but I know you're going to love it.
There's a little secret we have. Yeah.
It's our little secret.
I'm obsessed with this.
It's so good. I was really, I did Elizabeth's car. And so she chose the Lotus 72 with, who was it? AJ Foyt driving, and I just painted the whole thing with Eddie Van Halen's signature stripes and everything.
I'm obsessed with that.
It had the Buc-ee's logo.
I'm obsessed with that. Also, my reserve driver is Tyler Reddick.
There we go.
Perfect. Okay, there we go.
And I'm thinking less about aesthetics, except for the pink. I love pink.
Right,
I'm thinking less about aesthetics and more like I want to see these people against Lewis Hamilton and Lewis's car, right? I want to see this. I want to see what happens, right? So that's how That's where my thoughts are.
in
We'll
the
just have to
pink
make a
Mercedes.
bigger
Yeah.
version of the F1 car to fit Kyle Busch. Scale
Like
it up
Mondo
slightly,
size.
you know. Yeah.
We should have a little model of Kyle Busch for scale next to
Poor
it.
Kyle is literally just like twice all of their heights. Like he just
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I think wasn't
Yeah.
Nick DeVries and Yuki Tsunoda the historically
shortest,
the shortest on average of any
how
F1
how
driver
tall
pairing?
are they?
Oh, I think
Yuki
Yuki's like
is
5'4", something like
Yuki
that.
is very short, and then I
Let's
think Nick DeVries is only like 1 or 2 inches taller. Yeah, no, Yuki Tsunoda.
Tyler
I think
is 5'5".
okay.
Tyler's 5'5".
Wow.
So
Okay.
yeah.
So yeah, Yuki Tsunoda is 5'3", and Nick DeVries is 5'6". So
Oh,
we
I
have a
thought Nick DeVries was shorter. Oh,
I
okay.
thought Nick DeVries was shorter than that,
Yeah,
actually.
that's weird. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, Iddris.
Yeah.
What's
I was just gonna move on to the next thing real quick. So first off, just thank you so much for joining us on the pod today.
Absolutely.
Like, this has been
100%.
so amazing, so insightful. Like I feel like I'm ready to just hop right into a NASCAR. Like I put on my NASCAR persona and just really just channel my inner Stony Eunuch.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say I remember when Iddris and I met you and Elizabeth at the racetrack, and we were like as we were leaving. The one thought that I had in my head is just like these are the 2 most down to earth people I've ever come across.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
It felt like had we been in high school together, we would have been friends like immediately.
Oh,
Like, it's
yeah,
like
I
that's just the
agree.
way that you guys like even like Nolan like listening to DRS. It was the same thing. It was just like
Yeah.
I felt like it was listening to my friends from
Just
high
just
school
chat.
talk
Yeah,
about
and
this
just having
stuff.
a nice vibe.
And that's just the best vibe to have between people. Like just
Yeah.
that good friend chemistry, just like right there. It was amazing.
I fully agree. That was such a fun day.
Yeah.
That was so great. We had the best time.
Yeah. So wonderful. So yeah, like Gabe said, like thank you so much for this, and you know we just want to give you an opportunity to shout out like what's next for you, what's in the pipeline, where can we follow you?
Oh, so I have a new job coming, but I haven't signed the paperwork yet, so I can't say what the
okay.
job is yet. But I do
Okay.
have a new job coming. It's cars and motorsports, so that's exciting.
Ooh, okay.
Super stoked about it. But right now, mainly what I am doing is I'm doing my YouTube channel. So it is AlanisKing on YouTube. Everywhere on social media, I'm AlanisKing because a guy named Alan thought really highly of himself in 2009, which was like 5 months before I joined everything. And so Alan did AlanisKing on every single platform, so I couldn't use it. So I'm AlanisKing everywhere. Alan also gets a lot of my emails. Alan, you know too much about me. But on YouTube, I'm Alan is King. So it's very easy to look up. Alan is King. I do a lot of car reviews. I do like adventure things. I went to the Formula One Las Vegas Grand Prix on YouTube. I do all kinds of stuff on there. I really like the YouTube channel. My husband films and edits everything. He's really, really talented. I think he does a great job. And so we're doing a lot of that right now. I also have an upcoming podcast called 36 Questions with AlanisKing. It's really exciting.
Yes.
I have filmed 2 of them.
Awesome.
I filmed
Excellent.
with Tony Breidinger, who is a part-time NASCAR Truck Series driver and full-time NASCAR ARCA Series driver. She is great. And I filmed with Tyler Reddick, who is my buddy and my pal, and he's a NASCAR Cup Series driver. And the idea with 36 Questions is, you probably remember it, it went viral a few years ago. It's a study from 1997, which are the 36 questions to accelerate an emotional bond between 2 strangers. So the idea is you ask people all of these questions, and by the end of it, you're supposed to like them a lot more than you did at the beginning. So
love it.
we did this with Tony and we did this with Tyler, and I know Tyler pretty well, and I learned stuff about Tyler, which was really fun. We got to talk about his life, his fiance, his kid, all that stuff. Awesome. Tony was really fun. We got to talk about her life. We got to talk about her work, but also how she feels in her personal life. You know, she grew up in California, and then to race, she moved to North Carolina. We talked a lot about how, you know, she works all the time and she travels all the time, and she does wish she had more friends in the area and she had more people to do stuff with. And so it was very interesting to not only learn about these people's careers, but learn about how they feel about themselves. We talked about Tyler growing up he did like private school when he grew up, and he kind of looks back on that and wishes he had a little more experience with public school because he's trying to decide what to do with his kid. Right. And so it was talking. It's talking to famous people and athletes, but talking to them about things they don't talk about while they're at work, right?
Yeah.
And you get to learn a lot about these people. I learned a lot about Tony. I learned a lot about Tyler, and I'm just really excited to show that and show people who these people are. So I'm really excited about that. That is a separate YouTube channel from my channel. It's just 36 questions with Alanis King. I think I have it on my link tree if you just like go to my social pages, but I am really excited about that. So those are the two things I'm working on right now, I think.
Excellent. You're going to make a lot of friends with that.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm really excited. Like I learned a lot, and it was cool to talk to these people and just ask them about their lives. Right. And we get to learn about them. One of the things I talked about with Tyler was about to win his first NASCAR Cup Series race, and Chase Briscoe, who's another driver, sent it into a turn, missed the turn, wrecked Tyler. And like, he didn't wreck him on purpose, but he sent it into the final turn on the final lap, wrecked Tyler. So Tyler did not win his first Cup Series race. And me, a Tyler Reddick fan, I'm like, Tyler, right? And so Tyler gets out of the car and he does a post-race interview and he goes, it happens. We'll get the win eventually. And I was like, how was he so calm? And we were talking about how sometimes his son is racing or doing whatever, and his son is getting frustrated about something. And Tyler was like, I can see my frustration in him. Like, it's kind of like, it's a mirror of yourself when you're looking at your kid. And I was like, Tyler, that's really interesting, because I've never really seen you, like maybe like once I've seen you frustrated. Aside from that, you are very, very like mild mannered and calm when things happen. And I brought that up. I brought up that interview, and he said, well, you know what happened with that interview? I got out of the car and my son, Bo, was really, really upset because it was like dad's first win. He was really upset. And I calmed him down and I was like, I'm upset. But if I'm upset in front of him, it's going to make him more upset.
Yeah.
And so the reason he was so calm in that interview was for his son, who was off camera. And so like, it's stuff like that you get to learn about people.
That's amazing.
So interesting. So that's the podcast. I'm super excited about it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. That like my heart is so warm after hearing.
I know. I was like,
that's
oh
great.
wow. I was like, that's so sweet. I was like, Tyler, I'm sorry. That's so sweet. So that's on a separate YouTube channel. It's on 36 Questions with Alanis King. The YouTube channel is really new, so it might not come up right away, but that Linktree link, it'll be in there. I'll put it in there right now if it's not in there already.
Excellent. No, that's good to know.
Perfect. Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So that's everything, I think.
That's amazing. I mean, that's a lot. You're doing a lot. This is great.
Yeah.
I'm having fun.
Yeah. And killing it all at the same time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much again for coming on. This has been such a wonderful treat. We've been looking forward to this for a really long time.
Yay,
like
me too.
when you said that you were down for this, like on the email, Gabe, I just texted Gabe and just went, dude.
Yeah,
like all caps.
Dude, with all caps. That's our excitement.
Oh, thank
100%.
you.
Yeah.
Oh, this was so much fun. Thank y'all for having me. I appreciate it.
Well,
thanks everybody for listening to F1 or F Off. You can find us anywhere you listen to your podcast. If you want to hit us up, you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, X/Twitter, at F1 or F Off. You can also email us at F1 or F Off podcast@gmail.com. Please give us a 5-star review wherever you listen to. 4.5 we'll accept. It really helps us out a lot. Be sure to send it to our families, your friends, and also, and this one's for you, Alanis, definitely send it to the guy who talks about your bobs on Instagram. Send our podcast to him and have him just like if he hates it, perfect. You know, like we will annoy the hell out of him. Whatever needs to get sent to.
Don't send it to Mean Girl, Will You Marry Me guy. He will not stop commenting on your stuff.
Well, hey, they might boost our algorithm. I don't know. You know,
it's not worth it. It's not worth it.
Well, you know, we like our friends and family to listen. We also want to annoy our enemies. So
there we go.
There we go. All right. Thanks.
Oh, thank you all. Bye.
Bye.